The thing that's really great about it, and just about seeing the world in a from a creative standpoint, is that you just look at things in a way that you're visually, for me, it's about driving down the freeway maybe and understanding how a certain color works with another color, or a certain texture works with another color as you're driving 70 miles an hour on the freeway.
But there's a lot of areas of our life where we have to be creative. I mean, even in changing a baby's diaper. Have you had children?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you learn how to change a baby's diaper with the minimal amount of mess, the minimal amount of upset to the child, where they actually enjoy, the experience. That's all creativity.
I don't know. It's just there. It's something that I'm compelled to do. I have to do, and I have to do it daily. If I don't have some kind of aesthetic satisfaction on a daily basis, then I'd be slowly becoming a very unhappy person, very frustrated with life. So somehow I have to do something creative every single day. I mean, that could be, setting place cards on the table and decorating it up some flamboyant manner, or it could be gardening.
I don't know, I might be, shaping my trees in the front yard in a really weird fashion.
And I need to be creative on a continual basis, not just, between midnight and 7 or on the weekends. I really need to be able to flow in creativity all the time. That's how I live my life. I live my life that way, whether I'm gardening or making dinner or creating art or teaching a class.
Changing a diaper, making a sandwich, making love, all of that involves creative activity.
I believe artists are called. You are. And some people have the strength to deny it and the wherewithal to deny it. And, everybody has their own path. For me, I did not have enough strength. I am here, I'm an artist. And I'm glad to be an artist.
That became much more fascinating to me than my job that I had. So I quit my job after 20 months and went on from there. So I retired at the age of 22 from normal life.
That I would never be able to go ahead and expel the creative passion. I wouldn't be able to get rid of that. I was naive enough to think that I could live a life much like other people.
Everything else is secondary. Your friendships and your relationships and your work and how dirty your house gets and whether you get outside and your health to a certain extent. All those things fall to the wayside.
That creative drive is always there, always pushing me and getting in the way of all the other things I should be doing sometimes, like dusting and cleaning house and doing laundry.
But once I'm immersed into it, like this room is a total mess right now, so I'd say I'm immersed into it right now. I'm right into it right now. It's hard for me to ever break away from it. I mean, I could cover these walls with all this work if I was given the time and the space. I could just keep going with it and push it and push it and push it and push it.
And for me, it was the same with music, as it is with photography. I have to do this.
Never stops. It's 24 hours, 7/24, all the time, never quits. When I wake up at 4 in the morning, which is my most creative time, I wake up so enthusiastic to be alive and awake and creative that I can hardly contain myself. It's just a magic time.
Finding the time to be creative, sort of chiseling that time out. And that once I get into that space where I can be creative and actually be making work, sometimes only 2 or 3 minutes of that is actually really satisfying. But it's incredibly deep. I mean, it's almost like a state of mind where what I'm doing is so deep is the only word that I can describe it. I'm totally engaged in that thought process, what I'm doing, and then it's over.
A sense that I was in the middle of something that was very pleasurable, and I had the sense that if I would have set it aside, that it was not an experience that I could return to or recapture. So I just wanted to complete it. So, sometimes working throughout the night.
Oh yeah, now that I'm premenopausal, 4 a.m. is great.
You know, I'm totally deadline oriented in one side of my life, but the art side of my life I try to let be more free roaming, and I'll put as few restrictions on art as possible.
Ideally, in a perfect world, I would like to be able to do that nonstop, 18 hours a day for the rest of my life.
I could spend hours making that one special print in the darkroom.
I wake up and I still want the enthusiasm to go back to my studio to do more, to do more, to do more, to do more. I could do this every single day and not get tired.
I could be in a room full of people and stare, have solitude and stare. I could be on the freeway.
My solitude is in the car, driving. So my car becomes this little capsule of quiet thinking.
I need to be able to think by myself.
The time I had, it was quiet. You know, everybody was asleep. I could be alone. That's really important to me, to be able to walk in the room and shut the doors, you know, and engage on that level.
When I work, I like to work privately.
I guess maybe solitude for me is about pacing. And, you know, even when I say quiet, you hear all the bird sounds and things, but the different kinds of sounds, I guess, the more active kinds of sounds.
I keep notebooks, you know, and I always write things down, and then I go back in that notebook and I see if those were good ideas, or it's a feeling of visceral response. What was I thinking about, you know? And then I may find a brilliant idea that I can work out, you know, at that point.
Well, I think because the way I work is I do both artwork and writing, and I mix the two. I think when I feel like I'm blocked maybe with the artistic process, I'm doing more writing, and it's not that those two things are distinct, but
This actually flows, so that, I mean, the muses have blessed me, and it's just like there. No, very rarely does that happen.
But I think the writing is something for me that's kind of steady, and I don't think I really have experienced what I would call a block.
All I have to do is stop for a minute or a second, and then ideas start coming to me, more ideas than I know what to do with.
If anything, I probably come up with ideas when I just try not to. And oftentimes I'm not in a situation to capture it anyway. So what I try to do is put my work on a schedule, and I write and work daily from X hour to X hour to create the discipline to go ahead and continue doing the work.
Every so often I feel like I need a paradigm shift in my work.
I keep ledgers and notebooks and sketchbooks, and I write them down, try to keep track of them and all, and I'll never be able to accomplish all the things that are in my head that I'd like to.
And I'm a little bit tired of what I've been doing. So I sense that and then see what I can do to move on a little bit or expand what I'm doing. But I think the writing for me carries me in a lot of ways through whatever fallow periods I might feel.
And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. The strong sort of opinion that the music I come up with is as random as anything. It has to do with things that happen in my life, but I can't pinpoint it. If I come up with a melody, it could have been something that was triggered by being in traffic that day, or by having a meaningful conversation with someone. I never even try to explain or understand why.
You know, literally we found this great dried yellow tomato, and it's like just seeing that for what it is and being able to take something that's so ready for the trash and moving it into a place that gives it some sort of special aura that it makes having that creative drive really, really powerful.
Create from a different source than what already exists.
Photographing an 85-year-old woman with 85 years worth of lines and creases in her face.
To take all these ideas and you make something that didn't even exist before, that you may have never thought of as a concept.
The real essence in that isn't there. It isn't there until it just becomes so overpowering that it's deep down inside coming out. And, maybe the answer to that is it requires frustration.
I guess my work is inspired by things that I find problematic.
I think I get my inspiration from just about anything.
20th century composers.
But, from the garden.
Stravinsky.
Paradoxical.
It's from things I love, I suppose, more than anything.
People who are thought of as being the sort of upper class rebellious.
I mean, just, I don't know, that's from anything.
Bartok, Varese.
Confusing.
And I try to, in a sense, create work about things I'm really fascinated by. And
Their music is very cerebral.
by what I love, and then I'm inspired by, by that feeds my work, certainly.
And it's not easy music that's just handed to you that you can understand.
Interesting.
It can be like, from some National Enquirer as I'm standing in line at the Albertsons.
It's a tough nut to crack.
This place, Rainbow, which I love, is certainly an inspiration for me in a lot of the work I do.
It's very cerebral.
Intriguing.
A lot of the work is now plant-based and
Very unsettling to a lot of people.
bird-based. And
On a visceral level.
Compelling.
Because it's based in dissonance.
coyote-based. And
Polyrhythms.
That combination of factors. So it could be a variety of things. Mostly it has to do with social relations, both at what is known as a microcosmic level and macrocosmic, a micro or macro level.
Or microtonal things.
that comes out of living here. So I'm very inspired by, I think, my own immediate environment.
Things like that. Now, people that listen to my music, they would never say that my music is influenced by that, because sonically it probably doesn't have the same texture.
Simply standing in the darkroom, waiting for that print to suddenly appear in the developing tray.
It becomes a full experience. And it isn't predicated on whether or not anybody would like it.
But it's not the video that I make or the drawing that I produce. It's the process of working with ideas and making them manifest in the thing or the object.
For me, creativity isn't the end product. It's the whole process. The process is what charges me.
Let the music be created, and what happened from there was secondary.
Putting things together over the years from different backgrounds or things that don't quite fit together and making sense out of them has been part of my just creative response to the world.
Through art making, I could take all my interests in literature and philosophy and language and combine them into one endeavor.
For me, the art that always seems the most engaging is art that is informed by the world beyond the art world. You can make art about art, and some of it is pretty compelling. But to me, the really powerful stuff happens when people go outside of the art world for sources of to support and to find ideas and issues, to explore their intuitions.
I'm also inspired by my interest in politics, by my concern for social issues, and that drives a lot of the work, I think.
I believe that all art is political in the sense that it either reinforces status quo or suggests change. And that political dynamic is always at play. So that's what I mean by being political. Not necessarily political that addresses the politics per se of our society, which it does, but in the sense of change versus status quo, it is always political.
Ask people to question the way they see things, or to create new representations of people's perceptions of the world, either conceptually or visually or changing. And that if you're not doing that, if you're making work that appeals to the status quo, my thought on that was, well, why not just make them a good meal?
If the establishment is a building and you're sort of a dog outside barking, eventually people will just shut the door and ignore you. But if you go inside the building and try to work with the establishment and then infiltrate your ideas, you'll be much more successful.
People tell me they want to make art to get a reaction out of somebody. I always say, well, why make art? Why not just kick somebody in the shins?
There's been any number of movements who assumed that art was capable of great social transformations, and some of them have failed miserably.
Make art that gets a response from somebody, you know, that creates a dialogue.
We learned really about conceptual art, and that was a movement against, which eventually was co-opted, but against material, the sort of material gains in art making.
I had all the social obligations of a man with a wife and 2 kids, and being in the Bay Area in December and painting signs up on a ladder. And that's as close to being an artist that day as I could get.
Most of them did not make a living making art. I know artists who exhibit regularly, who have jobs in construction, for example.
I have done construction cleanup where I crawl around on my hands and knees cleaning out new construction sites.
And I went back into construction.
For a while, I was a video editor in New York.
I have been a real estate broker.
I was going to be a doctor.
In accounting.
And the two overlapped, but I still didn't think of my creative life as an artist necessarily interfacing with my life as a video editor.
History major and a minor in music.
I worked for a jewelry company.
I have an undergraduate degree in communications.
And studying philosophy and studying literature.
I have been a preschool teacher.
When I was interning as an occupational therapist when I was about 20, I had a little internship with a woman named Mary Del Bello, whose secret passion wasn't occupational therapy, but she was a potter, and I think she, of course, got me started there.
And I'd been a Chinese studies major, and then I was going to go on and work in job development in Chinatown in Boston.
I worked for the airline industry for 4 years.
A lot of it is finding out how you make a living. That's part of the grand creative adventure.
You know, got to have some way of putting beans and tortillas on the table.
So I think it's always a dilemma. I've always thought to myself, why did I have 2 jobs? I wish I was like an ordinary person who goes to a job and that's it. I have my job, it supports me, and then I have my job of making my artwork.
That I'd have sometimes thought that I would have grown up and gotten a real job.
Owning a gallery for 20 years and trying to get people to buy things off the wall.
Only about 5% of artists in any discipline make a living making their art.
So right now I'm very fortunate that I'm able to actually create a living in my industry. I'm actually making a living in my industry, which I have been doing for the last 12 years, meager living as it has been, with very little cash flow, very little income, but what income I did derive, majority of it over the last 12 years has all been made through the arts, either working in the arts industry, working with arts organizations, teaching visual art programs, or freelancing, doing freelance work.
It's very difficult to be in a position to actually do art and support yourself with art, to be an artist. That is difficult, and it's all tied into finances.
To make that promise to myself that I would only create my income through art, through the thing that I loved.
It hasn't been easy. I think I've really been fortunate, and some people would consider me nuts for saying that because I taught 12 years as a part-timer to make money in order to produce work and to buy the equipment that I needed to produce, the equipment or materials that I needed to produce work.
And I have to get the toys out, or the tools.
I don't know. In some ways, I think I'm just a guy with toys as far as all of my apparatus is concerned.
Generally, the commissions, whatever we've had as commissions, have gone totally back into the work.
Usually when you look at an honorarium that an artist receives for most projects, and then you look at the hours they spend realizing the project, they actually make less than minimum wage. And some people will take their honorarium and use it to buy supplies.
I've had grants where I was just given free reign to do whatever I wished for in the money, and that's, of course, that's never going to be a problem for anyone.
Even though we didn't make money directly in the form of an honorarium or through the sale of art objects, to say that it has nothing to do with money, income, or employment is not true, because indirectly it does. It affects people's promotions if they already have jobs in education, or in my case, it had something to do with my getting a job here.
Not necessarily to sell it, to be able to present it to an audience, yes. And generally that means ticket sales, but in order just to sell it per se, to get it out, yes, that, yeah, to be presented.
I only know how to make art I like, and if somebody else enjoys it, I'm thrilled. And if they wanted to pay me for it, that would be even better.
Commission is predicated on the fact that supposedly the client would like it. You know, my own work doesn't demand that. My own work doesn't demand that I like it.
I don't want to do commissions, you know. I'm not really interested in doing commissions. My story about commissions is not. It's a story about failure.
I love doing character studies, portraiture. Well, that's a far cry from doing a headshot, where the person doesn't want to be here to begin with and is willing to give you 5 minutes.
And that's what I call an illustrative commission. It's do my dog, do my face, do my house in an artist venue rather than photographically. And that's a trade issue. That's a question of the artist having his craft at hand to the point that can turn over an image to the people, and it's not what I consider to be creativity at all.
There's really very little creativity when you're working with the client. I mean, you think it might be, you know, or you might be hired because of your design skills, they like the look of whatever you do. But a lot of it ends up just being, you know, schleppy, producing something that the client wants. And a lot of it is just ends up being a lot of busy work.
I mean, there is the group that makes art and also can whip out some things to sell quickly. And I was a disaster at that.
You know, the red dot is like what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to sell our work. But I don't know that sometimes is all that important to actually have a piece sold. Because I guess to have a piece sold anymore to me means it's mediocre, because most of the people that know or that buy art have tiddly squat aesthetics and have no idea what it's like to be an artist and really aren't very knowledgeable.
I think of them as being sort of artistically illiterate. And I don't say that to put down the fact that they didn't support me. I just don't think that art or music, to them it's something in life that is, music is for the background and art is for the wall.
The commissions are necessary in a sense in order to be able to support that other aspect of it, because the other aspect of it is what happens with an artist when he goes into the studio and closes the door and goes into things that nobody but an artist could see, understand, or know anything about. You know, it's a different world altogether.
I don't equate success with anything on the material level. If my garden grows and the flower that it produces is very beautiful and fragrant, I can take no credit for that. That's not my success. That's just the energies of nature working and my cooperation with them. My success comes from being in that place where I can enjoy the fragrance once it has come to bloom.
I don't think monetary success is bad. If I could make a load of money from something that I wrote, I would take it. I wouldn't have a problem with it. I don't think that it would taint my perspective, because I know that my artistic aspirations are deeply rooted inside me.
My work is not a success or a failure. that stands alone.
I guess just accomplishing.
Experimenting with new materials
Continually discovering things and working on them.
and knowing that there's been sort of a real journey and a personal discovery that I've made, I think makes me feel like that I have achieved some success.
So success is that feeling of resolve, that I can look at a tape and every time I watch it, I'm like, yes, this is resolved, and I feel that.
Completing it. That's a good one. I know several artists that would appreciate my honesty there. Really just finishing it, you know, like I don't really believe it's ever done, but getting it into such a place that you can move it out there in the world and put it wherever it's going to go.
If I'm watching it in a public screening, that people are engaged in it, you can tell.
Works and fits, and the elation that comes like when I pick up a piece from my collage where I go, oh my God, that color looks so good right there. And I just go, oh, that's it.
You know, when you're working on things, you know it's like it's it. You know, you're working around stuff, and like with multimedia, you know, you try this, you try that, and all of a sudden something happens, and you just know it. You know, there's that intuitive sense of wow, that works. I'm happy. You know, I don't need to change a thing.
For me, fundamental level of success is the freedom to actually create the work as an artist. That, to me, that is success.
If you really are driven to make objects and to study art and to investigate the world in an artistic manner, and I mean that in a big sense, you're going to find a way to make a living and keep doing what you're doing, usually.
I think that people should strive to do what they want to do. And if they really feel that art is what they want to do, then they should strive to do it, because there's a greater likelihood that they'll find ways of accomplishing that.
I think that a person should only do what they love.
In the end, you have to be happy with the work you're doing, and you have to believe in it. And if you're not, you're going to be, I think, unhappy in the long run. And
This might be advice, is just really loving what I do and making sure that, you know, whatever projects I take on, I really love them. And if I collaborate, I really respect and admire the people that I work with, which I have been really lucky in that way.
I'm sure someone else would say, don't be so idealistic in response to that, but that would be my perspective on things.
I think that people need to be realistic.
If an artist truly is plagued with this thing, and they're young and looking at this as a way of life, the way to start out on that is don't try to own anything more than you can carry on your back.
I used to say it was brutally competitive. I don't know if it's brutally competitive. I mean, it's not like heavyweight boxing, but it is a competitive arena. And competitive arenas, by definition, are pyramid schemes. You know, you have someone at the top and everybody else who's not at the top.
When you feel so conflicted by, you know, too many things that you're doing and trying to work and trying to make a living and trying to do art projects, then I think the passion is what carries you.
Joseph Campbell said, follow your bliss, and doors will open where you didn't know there were doors.
It's really ultimately about passion, to be passionate about your work, and that's going to carry you.
You know, if you want to be an artist, make art and be in dialogue. Be connected to other people that are making art now and who've made it in the past.
You know, live your passion.
Completing it.
Premenopausal. 4 a.m. is great.
Ask me another
And that's what I do.
You make something that didn't even exist before, that you may have never thought